Join us on our transatlantic voyage across the North Atlantic as we stop in Nuuk, Greenland, after missing 3 ports. Into our second sea day, we were halfway between Iceland and Greenland. We had a formal evening, our second night from Iceland, and a really nice meal. After dinner, we caught the performance of Pantheon, and that was really great. After enjoying some wonderful music by Pantheon, got some icebergs out on the aft deck that were very large, but they were way out on the horizon. The following day we did ship activities followed by a Restapel lunch. This is where Holland brings in some of the local culture into the dining room. We really enjoyed it. This meal is made up of a lot of different little dishes. It was a good chance to try it. It's something I wanted to do in Amsterdam, but we didn't have that opportunity while we were there due to time constraints. Better rib. Thank you. We got into the dining room early that evening so that we could get out onto the bow because they had announced that it was going to be open while we were sailing up the Nuuk Fjord. It was quite beautiful in the fjord, and we really enjoyed it. It turns out later that the rain and bad weather moved in on our way out, so we didn't really get to enjoy it later on in the evening. But they also had a Viking soiree going on just a little bit after this. They treated the guests to a little bit of party in there. The bow continued to be open, but like I said, the weather turned bad, and they actually closed the bow later on. The only roads in Greenland are those that are in the cities themselves. There are no roads that connect the various cities that are in Greenland. The only way between them is by boat or by plane. The land between the cities is just too rough to have roads built, and there's not enough population to make it worthwhile. The Viking soiree actually got a lot more crowded than what we're showing here. This was very early on. I don't think a lot of ships get to go up the Nuuk Fjord. Nuuk is a little far north for most cruises, but because we had 3 ports canceled to be able to go to Nuuk, we had the opportunity to go up this fjord. The ice pilots we had on board were very familiar with this part of Greenland. Suggested to the captain that we could do this. It was really, like I say, really pretty up here. Unfortunately, the weather was not the greatest and reduced our visibility a bit, but nonetheless, it was really nice. had 2 ice pilots that got on board when we left Iceland and didn't get off until we got to Newfoundland. Our new friends John and Ruth, who also follow the cruising Canucks like we do, joined us out here on the bow. But this was probably the highlight of the trip up the fjord as it got narrow up here, and we really had quite the scenery up here. The reason why we had to cancel 3 ports was 2 of the ports that we were scheduled to go to in Greenland were just going to be inaccessible because of the pack ice around Greenland. Nuuk is on a part of Greenland that does not have a lot of pack ice, so they really felt like we could make it there. And as it turns out, we were able to go into Nuuk with no problems. We actually didn't even see many icebergs while we were up here. We had to cancel one of our port stops in Iceland just because of the time that it was going to take to make the extra sailing up to Nuuk, because Nuuk is so much farther north. And then we were going to have to spend extra time sailing back down south when we headed towards Newfoundland. After they closed the bow, we were allowed to go onto one of the upper decks at the forward part of the ship to view here, but the weather was just getting really horrible, and it was windy, wet, and extremely cold. And this weather would actually follow us on into the next day as we toured Nuuk. The next morning, after we get docked in Nuuk, we noticed there was a small iceberg just floating around in the harbor. It was there all day. One of the first things they did after we got dockside was to have an exchange of plaques. That was the first time we've ever got to see that, since this was the first time that the Zuiderdam had been in Nuuk. So they'd gotten a plaque ready on the ship for the port, and the port had a plaque for the Zuiderdam to put on its wall of plaques. And I think they gave the captain a gift that he's looking at right there. We waited a little while to get off the ship. We had lunch and then got off. It was still wet and cold, but it wasn't quite as bad as it was earlier.
Have a great day. Stay warm.
What? The city did provide a free shuttle bus for us to take into the center of town, which was quite convenient, considering the weather especially. It dropped us off near the cultural center, which was actually fairly close to Old Nuuk, which was something we wanted to walk through.
Oh yeah.
There's a craft store right over here. We walked around just a little bit, went in a craft store and found an ornament we liked, and then walked over to a mall that's nearby and wanted to go through a grocery store there just to take a look around. We did have quite a bit of debate on what the exchange rate was. We thought we knew, but then making the exchange rate was just a little bit puzzling, I guess. We still managed and picked up a couple items, some chocolate and things like that. They had the good European chocolate here at a reasonable price. We find it interesting just to see the different items that grocery stores offer in various countries go to, and what they charge for items even sometimes is surprising. Greenland uses the Danish kroner for its currency. It falls under the sovereignty of Denmark.
You can pay in euros too. So if you pay 20, it'll be.
Thought seriously about getting a pastry here, but just really wasn't quite hungry enough yet. We went ahead and shopped at a few of the stores in the mall here. Connie looked at several clothing stores. Even found a reindeer hide at one of the stores. And we started walking about Nuuk and finding a few statues and talking to some people that we knew off the ship. There weren't a lot of signs pointing you to points of interest. We were having trouble finding a couple of things we wanted to see. Fortunately, we ran into some good friends, John and Ruth, and they had already been about the town, and they kind of knew where everything was at that we wanted to see. But we did get to go through this area here before we met them, and this is Old Nuuk. Things really aren't labeled. You wouldn't even know that it's Old Nuuk unless you looked on Google Maps.
I don't know what that place is.
See, this is like past, like I would imagine in Scotland, you know.
An interesting fact that we found out about Nuuk is that the houses used to be painted in various colors that would denote their purpose. Like a doctor's house would be a certain color, a government building would be another color. I think some of the buildings still reflect this, but it's not necessarily the case now.
What's that? Yeah. Oh, hey!
Fancy meeting you in Greenland.
Yeah, Nuuk greenhouse, yeah.
Greenhouse in Greenland.
And I would never have guessed that that's their flag. See that red and white up there on the pole? That's their flag.
It almost looks like a nautical flag.
That's their flag.
Yeah, it's got like the half, like almost on with the alternating.
We climbed the hill ahead to see that monument. It turned out to be a little trickier than we had thought. There's really not a good path going up here, especially when it's wet and muddy. I actually fell a little bit as the mud gave way going down toward the bottom of the hill. No injury though, other than my pride. Hans Egede was a Lutheran missionary who founded Nuuk. Back in 1721, he came to Greenland to minister to the Inuits who lived in the area. And he reestablished contact with Norway and the mainland, which had been broke off about 300 years prior to this. After our tour of Nuuk, we went back to the ship and had a nice relaxing evening and some good food on the ship. I was up early the next morning, I believe recording my ship tour, and they announced over the intercom out in the passageways outside got into the rooms that there was an iceberg visible. And so I got a couple pictures of it. And later that day, Staff Captain Carl did a presentation on how ice navigation works.
It's also what we say, well clear. The reason being, if you take the ice of land origin, it's sticking out. It's also what's the most dangerous. Under the water, it's usually wider than a thin first year ice. 20% of it is 4 with a dot, thick first year ice. Both of them present closed off, sadly. On the right you have the more overview chart. We would not have been able to go to another town. So if we hadn't changed, we would have drifted around. And then instead of going straight here and waiting, we decided to take a more scenic route. The pilots did mention that there is a nice restaurant here, but sadly not enough space for 1,800 guests.
It was quite interesting, and he explained how they knew that we would not be able to get to the 2 original ports for Greenland.
Does anybody see my girl? Now if you run until 5 or 2.
After attending Kenny Martin's performance in the theater, we snagged us some early seats for the Orange Party. We knew it was going to be crowded, and it really got that way. We had good front row seats, and we enjoyed that. We thank you for watching this video, and we hope you have safe and happy travels.